Welcome to DIFM Live. I'm Robin Keller. I'm your podcast interviewer and the training and events advisor here at Northwest Industrial Resource Center. And we created this to give you an inside look at the work that we do every day to support manufacturers and the challenges that they're navigating. Our conference is exactly 1 month away from today, and we're going to be at the Erie Bayfront Convention Center, March 25th, and our doors open at 8:30. So we hope to see you there. And one of our special guests at the conference is going to be Shane Cantrell, and he is an operational excellence specialist who works hands-on with manufacturers to improve performance and is especially passionate about automation and the technology integration in manufacturing. In his role here, he assists manufacturers supporting their needs to become more competitive through continuous improvement, the technology advancement, and workforce initiatives. So welcome, Shane. How are you?
Excited to share. It's hard to believe it's a month out. It's awesome.
I know. I'm so excited. You're going to be a presenter there as well. So we're looking forward to that. But I want to let the audience know a little bit about you first. So can you tell me a bit about your background and how you got your current role here at NWIRC?
Yeah, so I grew up in Montana actually, and I did a lot of manufacturing operations roles, lean manufacturing. And so I've been in manufacturing for over 17 years on the operations side and consulting. And it's just been really cool to see all the different types of manufacturing we have. A lot of times you'll just drive by and you don't even know that you're driving past the manufacturer. Super great people, hardworking people. They really care about our communities. And so that's where I started. My roots is in Montana, serving them. And then just 2 years ago, I moved here to Pennsylvania. My wife's family lives here in Meadville, Pennsylvania. And so it worked out perfectly. I got to go back into my roots here with manufacturing to help at the NWIRC to help assist our manufacturers here in Pennsylvania. It's been awesome.
And you're really familiar with the whole MEP group that we are in because you were part of the Montana MEP, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So I served over in the western side of Montana for a few years there with that center. And so I'm well familiar with the National Manufacturing Extension Partnership. It's really cool. I actually met one of the directors here from the Pennsylvania Center down in Atlanta, Georgia, several years ago, doing some networking, going to breakout sessions, another conference. There's opportunities you don't even know sometimes when you make connections. I had no idea that it would lead me over here to Pennsylvania eventually. Bob Zaruda at the time was down there with the session for Lean Together, and that's how I met and found out about the center of what I get to be a part of every day now. It's really cool. It's a dream come true.
We're so happy to have you. Really, I know it's really funny how this all happened. I remember you were just visiting us and I met you. I had no idea that you were going to be my coworker like a year later. So it's been a great journey, and I'm glad that we get to do things together. But well, let's talk about automation because that is one of your specialties. And what automation technologies are you most excited about right now in the manufacturing space, and why?
Yeah, there's a couple that really come to mind. The first one I think about from a practical standpoint is collaborative robots, or sometimes called cobots. And there's a lot of application to save the big pain point for our manufacturers is labor shortages. And so if you can automate some things like machine tending for a CNC machine, or automate a welding process where it's hard to find labor for welders right now, there's a lot of our manufacturers that are doing some simple things with just having collaborative robots to help assist and to mitigate some of those labor shortages. So that's one. And then the other thing that's really the buzz right now is AI. I think there's a lot of applications for industrial applications to help streamline some of our data processing and communications, even things to help with like predictive maintenance, how to do better things with inspection, how to improve quality through that, and just to be able to make better decisions. So AI has been a huge thing even to save time in my role. But I've found a lot of manufacturers are still a little bit hesitant, but I think as they get a little bit more familiar with it, I think some of those fears start to dissipate as they see it's not as intimidating if they just start small.
Shane, how do conversations like this help manufacturing leaders prepare for larger strategic discussions when they come to the conference?
Well, I think it's huge for people to realize that you're not alone, because you're going to be there with your peers when you come to the DIFM conference. We're really wanting to drive impact, so we make sure that everything we do is actually going to be very relevant. We make sure that we have other people in the room that are going through the same kind of challenges. It's funny, every time I go into a manufacturer, oftentimes they think they're the only ones doing certain things, but as you start to have conversations, you realize, man, we're having the same challenges that everyone else is having. There's always going to be challenges with how do you get things out faster? How do you improve quality? How do you improve reliability? Automation is a huge way to support what we're doing on a daily basis. So I think this conference is going to be very helpful for people to feel like, one, you have community, and then two, get some new ideas, look at things differently. Because if we keep doing the same thing, expecting results, we know what that is. I don't think anyone's purposely trying to be insane, but I think sometimes we need to get out of our own head and we need to get some fresh perspective. I think that's the value of coming to the conference.
Well, could you share an example where technology or automation truly transformed an operations and what made it successful? Do you have an example?
Yeah, there was one where a manufacturer in Missoula, Montana, they had a CNC process where one operator was running one piece of equipment and he could only operate that one piece of equipment all day. He had to help change parts out when the CNC would complete its machining cycle. Then they would have to flip it over, put the part back in. So it was loading and unloading the machine. And that was a huge labor requirement for one operator. So what they ended up doing is they ended up integrating a collaborative robot with their CNC machining center, to where it saved like a half of the shift for an operator to be able to go and use his time to better serve other areas in the company. Since there's labor shortages right now, that was a huge transformation to be able to free up that operator to do more value-added types of work. I think there's a huge shortage still, and in fact, it's pretty concerning. The labor market's not getting any better. If you look at the workforce trends, there are going to continue to be challenges with labor shortages. So the argument that's saying that automation is going to replace jobs, I think that's really a misnomer, especially in an employee market right now. We have a lack of warm bodies. We have a lack of available resources in terms of people. So any way to address the labor shortage, I think, is a big win for manufacturers. That's one that comes to mind.
Is there anything else, though, that you think triggers an automation investment that a manufacturer is going to make? Just besides the labor shortages, I think we have heard the silver tsunami that is coming for sure as well, which will contribute to the more labor shortages. But what are other triggers, you think?
Yeah, so another big one is safety. You got a lot of ergonomic concerns. If it's repetitive motions, I think there's a lot of opportunities to improve safety by using robots in terms of maybe it's close quarters where you're having fumes and there's concerns from a safety standpoint for hazards. There could also be repetitive motions where robots can really help with those types of things. The other part of it is quality. So if you want to improve quality, you want to have a more reliable process. You get things done at the same time every time. It really helps support that. So there's some other applications that are like, just how do you make sure that you're sharing data and making sure that you're communicating well with all of your team members, having everything connected digitally. From when different process, a lot of times are siloed. So if you can start sharing that communication and using that information, that's part of automation. It's not always the robot. Sometimes there's some data analytics that we can look at and share even in the front office applications for our manufacturers. So there's a lot of different opportunities in automation for us to be able to unpack and make things better.
We hear a lot of manufacturers that maybe automation generates fear. So how do you build a culture that embraces this technology instead of fearing it?
That's a good question, Robin. I think the biggest challenge for folks is if you're not familiar with something, you're going to be afraid of it. So if you don't feel equipped, I think we need to do better training. How do we help people be effective with technology and understand some of the basics of automation, understand some of the technical details of that? PLCs, for example, basic electrician skills, troubleshooting. How do you get them involved early on? When I think a lot of people, when they start looking at automation, a lot of times it's management or owners or somebody in that level, and they forget to include operators on the floor that are directly involved in the process they're looking at. If you can let them know and get them engaged early on, they feel a lot less threatened by it because they feel like they're included and they feel like it's not a big shock. And Brandon just popped in the comments there. Training is huge. I think that is massive because if we don't let people feel like they're equipped, it's going to really cause a lot of stress and worry for people because they feel like they're just getting blindsided. So if you can just help people get a little bit more equipped, I think that would alleviate a lot of people's fear.
That's awesome, Shane. And I agree with you. I think too that the more you familiarize yourself with something, the less you are going to be afraid of it. And knowledge is power, 100%. So I'd kind of like to talk about the conference a little bit. And, why do you think it's important for manufacturers to attend our conference?
Well, I think that the big thing is the community. Like I shared a little bit earlier, I think there's an aspect of we don't know what we don't know. So if we don't have some other inputs to figure out how to do things differently, we're going to keep struggling with the same problems that we have. I know last year when I was there, I saw and I was intentional about connecting other manufacturers with other manufacturers. I think there's a huge value with the networking aspect of this. How do you meet somebody else that's in a similar role as you are? How do you help talk shop with them? How do you figure out, hey, maybe they've already done something that you can learn from them with? We're going to have an activity on the front side of this. And I know Sarah and Chad have done a good job talking about some of that already, but we're going to have an opportunity to be able to collaborate with other manufacturers in an activity. I can't give you all the details yet because if I told you, I'd probably have to do something pretty crazy, but we don't want to give away all the secrets. But it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be some really relevant conversations we're going to have around 4 different categories. So I think there will be some things that people will pick up on. They're like, yeah, that's what I struggle with every day. So if we can learn from each other, and if we can, I know there's people now that are connected since the last conference. They've gotten together, had tours with each other's different manufacturers getting together. I think that's something that we really need more of, is how do we get more manufacturers together to support each other?
That's so true, Shane, because we cover 13 counties and, they're kind of far apart. And I agree with you. I have seen the collaboration in the friendship that's been built, people in Erie County with Bradford County. It's just been really, really nice to see. So I know that will happen again this year for sure. And one question, what's a quick win on an automation project that helps shift mindset internally?
Yeah, so I think people to really understand that, like, okay, if I start doing an automation project without involving the key players, it's probably going to really be a bad experience for everybody. So a quick win is really to think about what problem are you trying to solve? I think a lot of times people think, well, hey, I need to get a cobot. And they just heard from some shop that they used a cobot. They don't know why they used a cobot. They don't understand what the value was in doing that. I think you need to understand, okay, is it a labor shortage you're trying to solve? Are you trying to improve safety? Are you trying to increase throughput? Are you trying to improve quality? I think you need to understand what the problem is that you're trying to fix before you just hop into technology or automation are great tools. But if you don't understand what the goal is, you might be very disappointed. In fact, I'll share a little bit in my breakout session about some of those challenges. I think there's a lot of times where people are disappointed with automation because they didn't know what they were looking for. So do your homework. We can obviously help with some of that, but I think it's important to know what challenges are you really trying to address?
Well, a good question actually popped up too. And, so what happens after they implement it? What does a good, successful adoption look like 6 to 12 months after implementation?
I think that's a good point. So there's different ways of doing automation. You can do it on your own if you have the internal capabilities. It's great to develop that internal talent internally. But there's also other automation resources out there. There are different integrators that can help and implement. They can provide support. But I think overall, you want to make sure you have training. You're following up to see how it's working. A lot of times we'll implement a solution or we'll get something and then we'll find out something else we didn't expect. Oh, I had to think about fixturing, or I didn't realize that I'm going to have to train up backups if you only had one person trained. So you got to think through, how do you sustain this long term? How do you continue to revisit any of the challenges that you didn't expect when you implemented? I think it's important for management and leadership to be actively engaged with all the people on the floor and making sure if there were issues that happened, that they walk through that, they communicate. I think the communication is critical to make sure that people are all on the same page and addressing some of the questions and the challenges people have.
Thank you, Shane. I do want to ask you about your specific topic that you're going to be talking about at the conference. So what is your topic? What is your title?
Yeah, so my title is it's from automation hype to ROI. And there's a lot of hype about automation, and I think that's why we're really wanting to address it's more than a buzzword. And we really want to get down to, how do we get a return on our investment? At the end of the day, we're here in business to do and make money, and we're trying to be successful at what we do. So when we think about automation, how do we know if is the juice going to be worth the squeeze? Are we really making the right decision? So what I often do on projects before I even get started talking about automation is I talk about, what's the return on the investment? What kind of value could we bring by implementing in this certain area that we're targeting? So we will talk about, how do you calculate return on investment? What things should you consider? For example, just one little hint is opportunity cost. If any of you have been through an economics class, I think it's easy to forget about, when we do one thing, what opportunity are we missing? So one thing that automation helps address is, what's the risk of doing nothing? If we don't automate, what is the risk to our business? I think there's a huge thing. If a lot of people are dragging their feet still on technology and automation out of fear, but if we don't automate, what's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years to our business? Do we risk losing customers? Do we risk having somebody else leave us because we don't have enough employees to run our operations? I think that's the real questions that people want to hear and to talk about.
Thank you, Shane. What's one piece of encouragement that you could give manufacturing leaders who are feeling overwhelmed by today's automation and technology challenges? There's so much out there. There's so many different things to choose from. I mean, they're overwhelmed. Where do they start?
Yeah, I think you have to start small. I think a lot of times people want to hit the home run. Sometimes it can just be starting in one small area. Maybe it's a pain point where you have a bottleneck process, and if we can impact that one area, that could really change our business. It could help us with on-time delivery to our customers. It could reduce our lead times. I think you just need to start small. If you try to take the whole thing all at once, it's overwhelming. So start with small pilot projects. Really think about where can I just make a small impact, and then you're going to learn. As you start in one area, you can figure out, then you can start to, it's almost like the snowball effect. You start with one small thing, and then you can slowly get momentum, and you build trust with your team rather than trying to take it all on at one time.
Great. And I have one more question for you. And what is any final advice that you would give to manufacturers, especially the ones that are trying to do more with less?
Yeah, I think our manufacturers have limited resources. We wear a lot of different hats in manufacturing. I've been inside the fire, know what it's like. So a couple hints. I think you need to make sure that you stabilize your processes. Before you even think about automation, people need to be thinking about, how do I get more stability with my scheduling? How do I make sure that my equipment is running more reliably? And then the last one, I would think this is very important, is how do I make sure I'm developing my people? If you want to make sure people are successful, even without automation, you need to develop your people. But especially if we're going toward automation and technology resources, we have to help them be more successful. Set them up for success, train them, make sure they're getting exposed to new technologies, make sure you're professionally developing your team. I think that's going to go a long ways, because technology only delivers return on investment when the workforce is skilled, they're engaged, and they're supported. We need to make sure that we're doing all of that to make automation successful.
Shane, that was great. Thank you so much. And, to the audience, if you want to come meet Shane, he's going to be at our conference March 25th. He's got his own breakout session. And like he said, we're doing a fun activity in the morning that we can't tell you about because it's a surprise. And we're going to just have a great time. And so much learning is going to happen. So feel free to sign up for our conference. Shane will be there. I'll be there. What more could you want?
Thank you, Robin.
You're welcome.